Just a minute. Okay, ji. Let's start with the another topic of section E, aspects of terrorism. Although when we are thinking about this topic, that what's the need for a medical graduate to understand about the psychosocial aspects of the terrorism, especially this word which creates the hype in the previous sections, which create hype in the previous part of the century, in the previous decade, especially previous 2 decades. The importance of terrorism is that it's now a part of modern living. It's now a part of modern warfare. In fact, so a medical graduate must knew what it is, how to tackle with it, who are prone towards it, especially when we are talking about the section E, which included in your book, in your syllabus, regarding the mental health of patients, as well as regarding the mental health of doctors. So, without this particular topic, mental health is again a questionable thing, because certain health condition, particularly related to the psychological and the cultural things, they can directly relate with this dangerous word, the terrorism. So, a medical graduate, despite the other things, despite the other aspects, he or she must also be aware of this terrorism aspect, psychosocial issues, right? Hopefully, you got the insight why we are teaching this special topic, or this unfamiliar term, or this thing which is not directly related with the daily basis patients. Obviously, God forbid. Uh, I wish that you should not ever face this thing, this term, the terrorism, or you should never be a victim of. I wish you should never be a victim of this terrorism thing, or you have to deal with the terrorist and all these things. But obviously, those who want to go the psychiatry in future, and particularly the criminal psychiatry and the criminal psychology, etc., in the future, they might be getting interaction with the such people. So let's see what's the importance, what it contains, what's inside this topic, especially for the undergrad people, for the undergrad our students. So let's start with it. So the purpose is, by the end of this lecture, you should be able to know what it is, which kind of people, which kind of patients, and which type of societies are particularly at risk, and what would be your role if God forbid some terrorist attacks happens before it and after it, how you can prevent it, how you can step forward regarding identifying the some terrorist people or identifying some terrorist attack, and God forbid if it happens, then what would be your response. Now, when we're speaking about the term the terrorism, so what comes in your mind, what pops up? Please type in the message box, so that I also knew that all people are connected with me. Just quickly write it. What comes in your mind? What do you think? What is terrorism? Let's see who replied first. Yes, violence. Yes, causing harm to people. What else? Yes, violent actions obviously causing terror or causing the fear or causing the uneasiness, restlessness, anarchy, etc. Yes, both at large masses as well as at the small group of people. Okay, now good enough, good enough. You guys got the insight what it is. Now, just tell me one thing. What is the purpose of spreading this fear thing, and what is the purpose of spreading this harm? Let's say, if I spread the terrorism, or some terrorist spread the terrorism, what he or she will got? What do you think? Why people spread this terrorist activities or this terrorism thing? Yes, extremism. What else? Good. Yes, developing fear. Yes, personal benefits, religious benefits, good. What else? Okay, fair enough. Good enough. Now, let me tell you one reality. Terrorism is not about only this picture, which you are seeing right in front of your monitors. Terrorism is something deep and beyond this picture. This is just the exhibition of terrorist mentality. This is just one way to spread the terrorism, but this is not the terrorism. Terrorism or the terrorist activities. This word particularly emerged in the last 2 decades. It's a part of your fifth generation war, the war with the ideology, the war with changing the ideologies, the war with changing the mentalities of the people, the war regarding gaining the personal benefits by changing the mentality. That's a fifth generation war, basically. So, if you go on the internet and search about this word, where it comes up, and what are the generations of war, how the humans evolved so much from the first generation towards the fifth generation and even the sixth generation war, then you will come, then you will got the insight that from where this word has been emerged. Okay, now, okay, so in a nutshell, war isn't about getting the resources or acquiring the land. Keep it clear in your mind. So, the purpose of war is always the ideology. People fought the World War One, the World War Two, just for certain particular ideology. Hitler is so cruel during the Second World War because of certain Nazi ideology. I will not talk about all these ideologies and these generations of war, as that would be beyond the scope of this lecture. But I must suggest you guys to go on the internet and always learn about something about what is war and what are the particular purposes of this war thing. Everyone is defended because uh, nature has created the sufficient resources for the mankind, right? So if every nation just uses his or her own resources, then that's more than sufficient. But war is basically more than the defense or more than that resources. You will learn a lot when just Google it. What are the generations of war? You will get the insight. Okay, let's jump to the point that what is the significance of this terrorism or this terrorist ideology for the medical students. Clear? Okay. Right. Okay. So let's first define this. What is this terrorism? Or as you guys perfectly define it, good enough. But let's make a concise definition from all the definitions which you guys have created. So basically, terrorism is a violent, powerful, and a fearful strategy which have some deeper meanings, which has some other purposes rather than those purposes which we can see, which we can easily. It's something beyond the picture. To gain those aims beyond the picture If someone is using a violent, a powerful, a fearful strategy, then we called it as the terrorism. So what are those aims? Maybe to generate the fear, maybe to generate the panic among the people, maybe to generate the insecurity, maybe to generate the hopelessness, helplessness on the institutes of a nation, to develop the mistrust in the societal institutes, to develop the mistrust in the on the judiciary, to develop the mistrust on the armed forces, to develop the mistrust among the peace-giving institutions, etc. So, if someone to gain these all or any of this aim, if someone is using a violent way, someone is using a powerful way, someone is using a fearful way, then this term is known as the terrorism. Now, let me tell you one thing. The most okay, just type in the message box, what is the most fearful things for the human beings? Or let me clear my question, that which thing generates the most fear among the humans? Just quickly type it. Yes, good enough. Death. Death. It's always the death, or always the risk of snatching the life from the people. It's a death which always creates a fear. You can see those things which are related to the death or life. They always get. They always got the media attention. They always got the hype. They always create the rating among the people. Such as nowadays the corona thing. It's just a virus. Okay, as we all knew that that the even the recovery rate is 97%. Only the 3% which are the immunocompromised or which got the secondary disease, they may got the death. But as this thing is particularly related with the death, so see what's the reaction of the people, what's the reactions of the governments, what's the reaction of public regarding this corona thing. So the basic aim, the hidden aim of terrorism is always to create something which is very closely related with the death. For example, the bombings. For example, I am giving the examples which the terrorists used in the previous era. The hijacking of the planes, the something which is related to like in the previous days, you may read the some conspiracy theories regarding this corona thing, that it's a created virus, it's something which originates in the China, it's a part of the warfare between the China and the America. Maybe it's true, maybe it's wrong, because it's a conspiracy so far. But if let's say, I'm just giving an example. If let's say someone is related to terrorism, then see how a tiny micron meter virus, what it generates, what it causes. Huh? So in this way, the terrorists, they are always adapting a strategy which is very closely related with the death thing. Okay, and next to the death, what are the other things which can create the fear or which can create the violence among the people? The other things are the security needs, the basic necessities of the people. Just have a glance at the Maslow's triangle. Just remember that thing. If let's say if a terrorist group wants to spread rumors regarding the Islam, let's say for example regarding the Christianity or regarding anything, let's say if the aim of the war is the religion, let's say, so beside this death thing, they can generate this fear via by snatching the security needs, by snatching the basic needs from the people. For example, this modern so-called the concept of this the different economies of the people. What's the story of this dollar bill? Just go and Google it. Then you will got inside why they developed that dollar, why the barter system become obsolete. No doubt, barter system is not as efficient as the today's modern plastic money, but today's plastic money do have certain disadvantages, right? As the money is not anywhere, it's just the paper or the plastic. So just go and read why they created this dollar and why they finished this barter system. So come to the point. In a nutshell, we can define the terrorism, that any violent strategy which a group or the group of people adapts in order to obtain their hidden aims. All of us remember in this terrorist thing, in this fifth generation war thing, the aims are not always clear. They are not clear, not at all. They will show you one picture, the group of the terrorist people, and they will gain the another aim. Got it? So, what we learned so far, terrorist is a violent activity, is a fearful activity, which usually which people generates because of a hidden aim. Now, let's redefine it. Terrorism is a tool which can challenge, which can destabilize, which can destroy a country in a similar way as the war. Like war did the material damage, war do the damage to, war cause the damage to the people, war cause the war increase the death toll number, etc. In the similar way, terrorism also destabilize the economy, terrorism also destabilize the people, terrorism in the same way destroy the people. Terrorism is a country's reaction to terrorism may add fear and distress in its own people. Let's say, if the country who is affected by the terrorism, if they don't appropriately behave, if they don't appropriately respond towards it, then the purpose of terrorism will again be highlighted in a more efficient manner. What is the purpose of the terrorism? To spread fear, right? If the country which is affected by terrorism, it doesn't answer in the appropriate way, it doesn't respond in the appropriate way, then this fear thing will be highlighted, would be highlighted. Media obviously plays a pivotal role. Media plays a central role, key role in generating the fear, in highlighting the how the media plays the role. Because now it's a reality that everyone can't visit a city, everyone can't visit the whole country. So obviously it's a media which is the ears, eyes of a state, right? Media is the important pillar in the state running machinery. So obviously we will believe what Google will tell us, obviously we will believe what the news will tell us. So if the media generates, if the media produces a double statement, if the media produces a documentary, for example, produces a news shows that directly highlights the negative aspects of country, then the country would be then the terrorism would cause the more damage. Got it? So what we learned from this slide, that terrorism is as fatal as a war, terrorism is as dangerous as a practical third generation or the second generation or even the first generation war, right? uh, Country's reaction, the people of country who are living in that particular country, their reaction is much more important, and medial role is even more important than the this people or the people's role. Now let's see what are psychosocial impacts, psychosocial sufferings of the at the individual level and at the society level. Let's say if someone xyz, god forbid, has become a victim of this terrorist thing, then what changes we can see at the level of his or her psyche. As I told you in the last lecture, just a minute. Okay, as I told you guys in the last lecture, that while reading this section E thing, please divide all topics into the psychological aspects and the social aspects broadly, and then further subcategorize the psychological aspects into the those aspects that are related with the psyche, those aspects that are related with the unconscious mind, those aspects that are related with the other psychological process, right? So let's divide toward this topic in the similar scheme, one at the individual level and then the one at the broader societal level. So if a person just comes through a war, if a person just comes through a terrorist war, or if a person just recovered from this terrorism thing, then what changes we will see in his or her behavior? So the first thing would be the preference for the isolation. I will explain why these things happen. Just first have an insight about them. Then hypervigilance. Then increased religiosity. Then he or she may become the victim of drugs. Then there would be the higher degree of mistrust, the jealousy, the paranoia, the revenge. Now, if you categorize all these effects, if you categorize all these things into two, then you will just got the two things at the end as extract. As you can see, there is just one thing: the appearance of paranoia, or the appearance of paranoid feelings, and secondly, an increased activity level. That's it. These are the only two things. Now let me explain how. Let's say, let's just imagine, god forbid, you're just passed from an incident, from a terrorist activity. Let's say you have just passing through the just passed through the bomb activity. You see someone, or you personally experience a bomb that exploded in front of you. Now what will happen? Will you believe on the societal institutes? Will you have the same belief on the law enforcement agencies? Obviously no. Will you have the same belief regarding the life and the death? Obviously, no. You will become fragile, right? Isn't it? You will become more fragile regarding the concept of this life thing, and you will become more determined. Like the death is no doubt in it; it's unavoidable, right? Because you just experienced the death, isn't it? So these feelings in the backside of your mind, they will generate the feeling of the paranoia. What will happen? All these words which are written in the bottom of arrow or at the top of arrow, this mistrust, this jealousy, this revenge thing, this isolation thing, these are all the signs and symptoms of this paranoia. When you become paranoid, obviously you become the mistrustful. When you become paranoid, you obviously you will become the revengeful. When you become paranoid, obviously you will prefer for the isolation, as you can't you have no idea that which place is safe, which place is not safe, right? In the similar way, to obviously this paranoid thing is not a normal thing. So to compensate the feelings of this paranoia, to compensate again, to rush back towards life, first you will took the sport of your religion, as the that that dabda thing, denial, anger, bargaining. And you learned which in the previous section, in the section D, the Kohlberg stages. So what will you do? First you will seek the help of your religion. So there will be an increased trend toward the religion. And beside that religion thing, you may fall, you may become the victim of this drugs thing, as they are soothing, as they help you in fighting that thing, as they help you fighting in the memories of that particular event. Now got the insight that how this arrow develops? All these things emerges, all this chain of event happens because of this paranoia in the back of your mind. But again, remember, no doubt, majority of the individuals show all these signs, symptoms, all this paranoia, etc., blah blah. But there are obviously certain individuals to whom this terrorist thing, or to whom this thing doesn't matter, or they didn't affect it didn't affect it in the similar intensity as to some XYZ or other individual. The difference lies always at the unconscious personality factors, unconscious learning experiences, etc. Right? As every individual is different. Now let's see what happens at the society level. More or less, as we know that from the knowledge of the section D, that society is a mixture of the individuals. Obviously, when the similar type of similar ideology, people living together, then they develop a similar society. So all these effects will be projected in a bigger way on the society. Got my point? All these factors, all this paranoia, all this hypervigilance, factors would be the same, but the projection would be at the mass level. Let's see how. Obviously, in the previous slide, in the previous figure, there was the isolation of the person because of paranoia, because of the danger which is going on in his or her mind. Now there would be the isolation of society. Obviously, mistrust and paranoia, like this I told earlier, Obviously, because of this paranoia, just imagine the situation of a person who just the situation of a society who just went through this terrorism thing. Just okay, I guess this lecture happens at the right time because now I can quote the recent examples. Just remember the events which happened in the previous 3 months. What happened at the society level? Isn't the depression level increased? Isn't the anxiety level increased? It increased so much that despite the ever increasing number of this coronavirus, that the government is now reopened all the markets and reopened all the things. Why they reopened? Because there is a lot of pressure from the people side, because the whole society is suffering from the marked depression, from the marked anxiety. So in the similar way, when the terrorism is there and the bombings are there, when you know that everything is there, so there is a lot of depression, there's a lot of anxiety, society would become the isolated, the member of society don't want to talk with each other, such and such and such. And because of all these things, another bad thing happened, which is known as a PTSD. Let me recall the previous slide, which is the further expression of this hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is that you're just sitting quietly, you're doing your own work, then a daytime nap occurred or the daytime dream happened to you, and you just imagine, you just perceive, you just hallucinated that a bomb is just near to explode in your field, or or a person who is just merely entering your office, he is a potential victim of coronavirus, is carrying the virus with him or her. So you immediately become fearful, you immediately become you immediately start your voice will be shaken, the sweat would be in your forehead, etc and etc. So this hypervigilance thing, when we project it towards a society or toward a group of people, then it emerges as a PTSD, or the post traumatic stress disorder. As far as about the PTSD, just remember one thing: it's nothing. It's a type of day flash. It's a type of daydream, right? When the people suddenly start assuming that they're now in the similar situation as they were during the trauma thing, right? Now, what we are reading about the psychosocial impacts of terrorism at the individual and at the society level. Those individuals and those societies who are either living in the terrorist area, terrorist attack era, or who have just passed from this activity, from this terrorist activity. Got my point? Okay. Now let's see what is the profile of the suicide bombers, or what is the suicide bombers as they have written in your book. That's why I wrote it. Otherwise, it's a profile of all people who usually involves in this terrorist attacks. As the author of your book, he worked a lot on this terrorism. He's working since 2003, and he published even the very high quality research papers on this terrorist terrorism, blah blah blah. So he just wrote the suicide bomber. Otherwise, these are almost the similar characteristics these groups share with each other. Usually, they are the males between the ages or between the teenagers, the 10 to 24, or the slightly early adulthood era children's. Why? Because this is the right age when obviously we need the bonding. I will tell you later on why they choose the people with this particular age group, and why the males are becoming the more victim of this thing. Okay, yes, recently, however, the females also began to recruit for the suiciders, for the terrorist groups. Gender doesn't matter. They just want to achieve their own goals, right? Males, as they are readily available, they are readily, if I will use the appropriate term, males with the right profile is readily available. I will share what is the right profile for this terrorist activity. So suicide bombers mainly have the feeling of the anger, feeling of the revenge, and feeling of the hate. I will tell you later on from where they got these feelings. Trainers use such feelings by generating apathy, by extensive use of hallucinogens, by the stimulants and other drugs of abuse. Now, quickly jump to the next slide, then I will repeat it. Okay, first leave it. Now, focus on it. By keeping in mind these lines, males in the teenage or right in the early adulthoods, males or females with the feeling of anger, with the feeling of revenge, with the feeling of envy, with the feeling of hate, and the terrorist group use the apathy feelings via the extensive use of drugs, hallucinogens, stimulants, blah blah. By keeping these three minds in, by keeping these 3 points in your mind, just read this slide, not this one, this slide. Now, those homes with the domestic violence, those people who may become, who may become the abuse of physical kind, emotional kind, or even the sexual kind. There is a frequent history of law breaking, conduct disorder, and the limited emotional outbursts. I will explain what is this thing, this conduct disorder. Now just remember. Now let me explain this. Just recall the knowledge from your section C, the theory of personality development, Ericksonian theory, Erickson's theory. Erickson told us that society plays an important role in shaping our personality, and at the certain point in our age, we need attachment from certain group. Everyone needs attachment. Everyone wants to recognize him or herself with certain group, right? So, what will happen? Let's say, God forbid, I don't know why. I don't know should I use the word God forbid or not. As lot of people, unfortunately, particularly in the countries like in the third world countries like Pakistan, they have become the victim of this not accepting by certain group, right? There is an increased incidence of the home violence, and there is an increased incident at the violence at the institutional level. There is an increased incident of the abuse by the societies. There is increased incidents abused by the offices, etc., etc. So now what will happen? That the people from these countries, particularly, I'm not saying that only these countries, but mostly from these countries, what will happen that they would be unable to attach themselves successfully with any group in the society, as society is not ready to accept the new people, as society is not ready to accept the people with certain shortcomings. Although no one is perfect, everyone has its own shortcomings, but it's a role of society that he should accept people. Now what will happen? That particular individual, wouldn't he or she would got the feeling of negative feeling in his or her mind regarding that particular society, regarding that particular family members, that everyone is rejecting me, right? So ultimately, what what comes in his or her personality, the fidelity would not come. Or what is fidelity? Can anyone write in the message box? As this topic is a little bit more complex theory, so just quickly write it. What is fidelity? Quickly, quickly. It is a virtue of some Ericksonian stage. Yes, faithfulness. Excellent. Excellent. Faithfulness. Yes. So under these hostile feelings, what will happen that that particular individual or the members of the society, they will not be faithful with their own society, rather they will have the negative feeling, they will have the negative emotions for their own people. Now these terrorist people, these terrorist groups, they are in the search of for these people with lot of rejected histories from the society, from the homes, those children who didn't get enough attention of their parents, those children who didn't get the enough attention of the school, particularly those individuals who are always thinking about themselves as the useless things. These people are the particular right choice for these terrorist groups. Why? Because they are more prone. Just imagine a person who is rejected by the society, just imagine a person who is rejected by the family. Let's say if someone third person approaches him or her and he just sharing the some of the condolences, he is just sharing some of the empathy with these people. What do you think? Didn't these guys will attach with this group? Will they? Obviously they will. Now first, these people, these terrorist people, they are making a profile of the people they needed, and among the profile these points are the highlighted, that there must be there must person should be from a society where the violence is very prevalent, person should be from a society where the abuse is very prevalent, person should be a society where the law breaking doesn't mean anything to anyone, anyone with the power can break the law, right? Person should be a society, should be from a society where there is a very less communication, less healthy interaction with the other people, because all the person with from these societies, they will have all the negative emotions which are required for a terrorist activity to complete. Got my point? That from where I wrote all these points. Got it? Conduct disorder, basically it's a disorder of the adolescence, in which there is an increased history of breaking the law. Obviously at this point, I am expecting that you guys are aware of the antisocial disorder and social personality disorder. So for the according to DSM-4 criteria, the antisocial personality disorder, we are not labeling someone with it until he or she reaches at the adulthood stage. So anyone with the antisocial personality disorder, all those characteristics in the adolescence, he or she will be labeled as the conduct disorder. Why someone become the antisocial? Obviously, when there is a rejection from the society, when there is a competition, when there is a law breaking, etc. and etc. You got the point? Okay, let's jump to the previous slide. Okay, now let's see what are the social demographic parameters. Good, good enough. If someone is not clear, then please text in the message box so that I can repeat it. Now, relate all these factors with the thing which I have just said. These are those factors. If they are present in a society, then the society would be at more risk of then the people of the society would be at more risk of becoming the member of some terrorist group. Among one, poverty, obviously it's a mother of all negative things, it's a mother of all crimes, because when the basic needs are not met, as according to the Maslow, as according to the psychological perspective, as according to the societal perspective, then obviously people will do anything for eating the bread. Secondly is obviously the illiteracy in that way, that if the people would be illiterate, then they will have a more belief, more blind belief on the religion, more blind belief on the societal norms, on the societal things. Now, and let me tell you one thing. The Actually don't want to talk regarding the religious thing, but here comes a handy point from it. So let me tell you one thing. The lot of people nowadays, they have no religious knowledge, but they have a very limited religion knowledge, and I am afraid that with this limited amount of the religious knowledge, anyone can exploit us, frankly speaking. Anyone with the more, even pretending to be the more bigger scholar, etc., he can exploit us. So here comes the this literacy thing. Ignorance, intolerance regarding the other people, other persons of the society, the prevalence of the disease which is directly related with poverty, insecurity regarding, as I said, that where there is more law breaking, there would be the people would be more antisocial, and injustice. Hopefully these points are clear. Okay, now what are the various techniques they use to train the people, to acquire the people? First thing is the ritual communication, ritual communion. The attachment of the people via exploiting their religion, via exploiting their, religion is, as I said, as I always told you guys, that never mess with the religious, with the societal beliefs of the other people. Never mess with it, frankly speaking. And because religion believes these are something which the people acquire in their lifetime, in the era of 40 years of their life, 50 years of life. You cannot first change it. Secondly, you have no right to talk about anyone's beliefs. You have no right to talk about anyone's ideology. You have no right to talk about anyone's religion. Now, these people acquired those people for the terrorist camps, for the terrorist group, with the previous characteristics. First point, how they approach these people, via highlighting their religion. For example, as the Muslims become more what I should use the appropriate word, that and they defame Muslims more in the previous era, the previous 2 decades. Now let's say, if a new terrorist group emerges, as you know that Muslims are usually belongs to this third world countries where all these previous factors are very prevalent. So if let's say terrorists from a European country, what do you think that in order to communicate, in order to gain the confidence of that person from the third world country with all those feelings, with all the misery, what do you think? He should present him or herself as a Christian, as a foreigner, or as a local person? Obviously, as a local person with the similar ideas, with the similar values, with the similar norms. Got it? So, what's the first point? They will first change their personalities as per the local people. They were first change their ideology as per the local people. Then, when we just imagine that you have visited a foreign country where there is no Pakistani. Suddenly, you see the two or three people who are speaking the Punjabi at the airport. What would be your first step? Won't you be attracted? Obviously, you will. Second step they are doing, which is known as the term the bonding. They will share the similar ideologies like the people of the victim country. What I am talking about? I am talking about the techniques which the terrorist group people used in order to acquire the people in their terrorist group. First thing is the ritual communion with the similar ideology, with the similar values, with the similar beliefs. Then they use these beliefs, these ideology in their talks, in their dress pattern, in their eating patterns, in order to bond with these people, with this newly affected victims. This whole process is known as the psychological investment. The process of this communion, the process of this bonding, the process of this changing their own personality is known as psychological investment. Then obviously, if someone who have the ideology of it's just an example, it's just an example of the psychological investment. For example, the commitment of reaching the heaven. If someone from the Muslim country, if someone have the Muslim ideology, then they will do, okay bhai, if you will just explode this bomb, then you will travel in the Jannah and etc and etc. And these are the two examples of the psychological investment which are now coming. Stories of explicit sexual fantasies of the adolescent year. Let's say if someone has become the victim of the sexual abuse, if someone belongs to the to a society where the sexual abuse is very common, then the psychological investment of this terrorist group would be the telling the stories of this all these fantasies. Now, what are the profile of people who just have acquired by this terrorist group? Now, previously what we have seen, that we have seen the profile of the people who can easily become the victim of all these groups, who can easily to whom the terrorist groups are always in search. Now we will see the profile of the people who have been acquired, or who are passing through the process of acquiring, through passing through the process of joining some terrorist group. Right? Got the difference? The difference is very important also for the exam point of view. As in the SCQs, maybe sometime it's written, write the profile of behavioral pattern of terrorists, and you will wrote all those patterns. Now, if someone is acquiring those terrorist groups, if someone is going to join those groups, then these changes are predictable. These changes can occur in his or her behavior, but always remember that these changes are not absolute. Always remember, these groups always work undercover. These groups always work, undercover in a changed manner. So, what we can predict from these things, if someone has a very notable, very strict if someone become violent regarding the reviews of the religion, regarding the reviews of the norms, values, regarding the views of the world, that this world should be bombarded, the new world should be maintained, the new world should have the justice, blah 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 blah. Another thing, social isolation and the avoidance of the routine family and societal events. As we said in the previous slides, that those person who are becoming the victim of this terrorist group, they already have the negative feelings in the mind, in their mind regarding the society. So if that feeling is becoming so much, if getting the so much peak, if getting the so much height, then there would be the social isolation and the avoidance from the routine life. Reduced interest in the loved ones, family, and work. Obviously, they have the shifted interest and playing with the violent video games, searching the violent content on the internet, purchasing the violent, that and the experimental arms, etc., firearms, etc. Tendency to be secretive and despair without any specific reason. Giving away all the personal money values to a secret organization, towards an organization which you don't want to claim, and have an obsession with the weapons, knives, and such dangerous things. If you just put a focus on all these 7 8 points, then you will knew that all these things are related with the previous slides. Okay, now terrorists and the mental health. Now the question is that, do all the terrorists, do all the people who join these terrorist group, did all of them have the psychological issues? No. The answer is no. Most of the psychological features or the psychological comorbidities they have the paranoid anxiety. Yes, as I cleared earlier, always have the envy feelings regarding the other people. They always have some magical thinking or some illusion, some hallucinations. They always have some unstoppable denial, and they always have the grandiosity, being impressive, being imposing, etc. And they are usually passing through the major depression, major depressive disorder. On the other side, they are the highly intelligent people. Obviously, terrorist organizations don't require the dumb people. Obviously, because dumb people or those people who are not intelligent, who are not much more proficient, they don't need it. They needed people with those psychological profile, and regarding the skills profile, the person must should have some technical education, some technical interest. These people are highly sane. They are not insane people. They are highly focused, and they usually don't have any identifiable psychopathology. They don't have some, the psychiatric disorder or some other disorders. Got my point? What's the purpose of adding this slide? That you should have an insight while taking the psychosocial history of any patient, that the people who are prone towards this group, they don't have any psychopathology. Rather, they are highly intelligent, they are highly sane people. Now, what is the psychosocial manifestation of effect is, let's say, if the people have, uh, you know, passing through this terrorist attack, then obviously the psychotrauma is would be there. We will teach you guys the psychotrauma in a separate session, what it is, and in a separate lecture. So far, just remember one thing, that it's a trauma in your towards your psyche. It's a trauma in towards your mind, right? And research shows that 1/3 of the uninjured survivors and 2/3 of the injured survivors, they develop the long-term psychological disabilities. For example, the depression, for example, the hallucinations, for example, the various sort of psychiatric disorders which you are also reading nowadays. What's the management at your part? First, you have to mobilize the psychotrauma victims. Okay, then you have this is the management for those people. Let's say in the future, god forbid, some attack happened and you are the part of the medical team. You are the treating surgeon, you are the treating physician, you are the treating pediatrician of the area of that affected people. Now you have at least some of these points are in your mind, that these people are the special people, these people who have just passed through this terrorist attack. Obviously they have they have passed, they have bear something bigger, right? So what's your responsibility, what's on your part? You always mobilize the resources. You should always try to implement the biopsychosocial approach, integration of the psychological care with the surgical care. Yes, it is absolutely necessary to stitch the wound, no doubt in it. It is absolutely necessary to do the dressings. It is absolutely necessary to join the bones, broken bones. But in the similar way, it is also absolutely necessary to do on the counseling sessions. It is also absolutely necessary to evaluate the psychological health of those terrorist attack who just recovered from the terrorist attack, right? Updating, yes. Continuously update your patients, continuously update yourself with the newer knowledge, with the newer situation that what is going on, etc. Linking up survivors and dead with the families and the unit centers. This line is particularly written for those healthcare providers who may be at the spot. For example, God forbid, you are the medical officer in the future, or maybe you're working as a ER consultant, and you just heard the news of some bomb blast, and your hospital sent you at the scene, at the crime scene, at the terror scene. So part at that point, obviously it's your responsibility to work with the law enforcement agencies. So it's your responsibility to link up the survivors and the dead body with their families, to identify them, to do the triage, to apply the that identity bands, etc. All these points are written in that perspective, right? The last point, if you divide this slide into two parts, then it would be more helping. The third last and the second last point is for those medical people who are present at the spot, at the crime spot, whereas the top two and the last point is for those people who are providing a daily basis care to these patients, right? Ongoing psychosocial support for the family, okay, fine. Return to the normal activity, yes, obviously, as we have read in the section A regarding the disaster management, that the people, as early as they will return towards their normal activities, then as early they will recover. Care of the carers, yes, if let's say you are the head of a team who is doing the non-stop operation from the last 72 hours, then it's obviously your responsibility that you should provide the care, you should take care of all those people, as you have studied about the burnout, as you have studied about the stress. So it's your responsibility to take care the mental stress of all those care providers. Legal security and operational responsibility is also written in perspective of the on-site operation. Okay, so far what we have. Okay, let me repeat it. I guess I did it in a very hurry. So I divided the management into two parts. I will divide into two parts. One thing is that for all those management options on the day-to-day care people, and the other one management is regarding the on crime scene, on spot, right? For the on spot thing, you have to collaborate with the law enforcement agencies. In a nutshell, you have to you have must try to triage the patients, you must try to link the patient with their families, and on spot you must try to take care the burnout, to take care regarding the stress of the carers, regarding the stress of the other people who are working with you, like the other your attendants, like the other law enforcement agencies, etc. Third thing, for the day-to-day care, there are only two things which we can do: evaluate psychologically these people who are just recovered from the trauma, this terrorist activity, and secondly, try to send them on their work, try to engage on the in their daily life activity as soon as possible, right? Now, what's the take-home message? Be a guardian of your own thoughts. Be a guardian of the that which things start suddenly attracting you. Like if you maybe you can be trapped by these agencies, you can be trapped by these terrorist groups in the future, maybe. Okay, so you must have the insight regarding your own thoughts, because actions comes later, whereas the thoughts come earlier. You must know where you can breach the confidentiality. Let's say during the psychosocial assessment in future, if the patient claims that it's just a matter of the few days, for example, I am patient, it's just a matter of few days, this whole world will become a new world. Let's say he will give you some clue, then it's your responsibility to inform the law enforcement agency. You can breach the confidentiality. and obviously be adaptive, be prepared for the changing circumstances, as all of you have experienced this corona outbreak, no doubt in it. So I guess we must be always be prepared. This is the reality of the life, you know. Now thanks for your patience. It's the end of lecture. I have 6 minutes are there, so if anyone have any question, please ask me. It's clear, it's crystal clear. What it's really clear. Please do mention in the comments. I guess it's crystal clear. Huh? Okay, tell me one thing. You guys are effects of terrorist act. Yes, they can be eradicated, no doubt in it. Psychotrauma can be treated, but you know it's a lifelong process. It's obviously it takes time. It takes therapies. It takes you know, the dilemma is that people don't want to talk about all those events. People don't want to remember all those memories of their, you know, life. So if someone is willing, then with the right appropriate care, yes, no doubt in it, it can be easily treated. Okay, thank you everyone. In advance, Eid Mubarak. As I wish that we should meet right after Eid, but don't know what would be the circumstances. So take care.